Welcome back to a slightly different series from the usual guides on this channel. Since a few people showed interest in seeing some tournament gameplay with my original Rainbow Nahida deck, I decided I'd record footage from the weekly tournament and upload it with some commentary. I ended up doing pretty well and getting my first 5-0. Let's start the first game and discuss the deck as we go. Okay, so here's game 1. And the first thing we notice is our opponent's playing not really a meta deck, but a deck based around the burning reaction clearly between Pyro and Dendro, with Xiangling being their sole source of Pyro application. So for our mulligans here, deciding our opening hand, we want to make sure we have some cards that are good early on. Vanarana is very good with the Covenant of Rock Arcane Legend card we play, and gets value over time, and Treasure Hunting Sealy, you really want to play this sooner rather than later so you can actually have time to get those 3 cards out of it. So those are good keeps. I Haven't Lost Yet is a good card, and the food card Lotus Flower Crisp is also very good, and you might keep it against some very aggressive decks, but in this case we're going to want to mulligan them for some other core cards, and the Paimon we've drawn here is arguably the best one that we were really looking for. So we're going to start on Raiden Shogun. The key idea with this deck is to start getting your summons out first, get your reactions going before moving to Nahida, and the Raiden Shogun summon takes 3 whole turns to get full value, so you really want to get that out on turn 1, since the end of turn 3 is likely to be when the game ends. We have 3 Dendro dice here we could keep, but all we really need to make our turn 1 play with this Paimon in hand is 3 Electro dice, or 3 dice we can use for Electro, and then 3 of anything, maybe including Omni dice, that we can use for the Paimon. And if we roll everything, we end up seeing, okay, we maybe need to tune 1 card from our hand, which is going to be the Hash Brown, since it's not immediately useful to our opening turns, and we'll probably draw more food with this Treasure Hunting Sealy. Let's be careful with the dice we use. We'll need those Pyro dice to play our Paimon later. And we'll play the Sealy before we use our first skill in order to start getting that value. Okay, so opponents start on their Xiangling. Makes sense, they need to get their Pyro application out. And we're going to need to think a bit about how we can deny their Pyro reactions. And they're going to spend the rest of their dice playing a weapon card and an artifact card on their Nahida with the help of their own Arcane Legend card and a Lusu to maybe give them energy in the future. So now opponents ended their round, we have complete information to make our last few decisions on. Obviously we want to play this Paimon, and we can use Vanaran to store some dice the next turn. Now we can either just play Paimon, Vanaran and store 1 Pyro die to our next turn, or we could swap to our Xiangling and play our Vanarana along with our Covenant of Rock in order to store 2 random dice to the next turn. Now the key fact here is we want to avoid getting a burning reaction if possible, because that will then let them get more sources of Pyro application, and that would then allow them to keep triggering more and more reactions, and that weapon on their Nahida gives them even more damage when they trigger reactions. So we really don't want that happening. So since opponent was left only with 1 card in their hand, if we catch the element, the Pyro element on our Raiden and then immediately swap off it on our next turn, then it's unlikely that opponent's going to have a quick swap in order to actually move straight to a Dendro character and trigger a reaction on our Raiden. So it might slow them down a bit basically, and avoid some reactions happening. Opponent's going to use a Star Sign to charge up their burst on their Xiangling, so this will allow them to get a lot more Pyro application and guarantee trigger some reactions in the next few turns. That does use most of their dice. So we've got 11 dice here, and this allows us to, especially seeing as opponents use most of the dice, make a nice clear plan for our turn without worries of being disrupted. And specifically 11 dice is enough for 2 swaps along with Xiangling's skill and Nahida's 5-cost skill. So that's 2 swaps for 2, Xiangling's skill for 3, Nahida's for 5 is 10, and we have the 1 mana or the 1 die left over to play our Liu Su as well. So that's our obvious play on this turn, making sure we use our Electro die, not our Pyro die on this. This also means that after we use our Zhang Ling's elemental skill, Zhang Ling will be on 2 energy. And it would have been nice to use Zhang Ling's burst, but with our die rolls, it wasn't really realistic to end up with enough Pyro dice to use both Zhang Ling's skill and Zhang Ling's burst on this turn. And this play is still very good. We don't have any mana fixing cards or enough cards in our hand to tune really to have enabled Zhang Ling's burst on this turn. But it's fine, it's ready for us to come back to and might be very powerful for closing out the game. And opponent's Zhang Ling is taking a lot of damage here. The Zhang Ling isn't necessarily the character we want to be dealing a lot of damage to in this situation, because Zhang Ling's already used her burst, but it's still a fairly efficient kill and a very high damage play from our side. And with the backup energy we have on Zhang Ling and the I haven't lost in hand, we don't mind too much if our Nahida dies here, since Nahida just dealt a large amount of damage on the last turn with her skill. It was still worth it to swap to her. But partly because Nahida is very likely to die here, we're re-rolling for Pyro dice as a top priority, thinking that we can swap to Zhang Ling when our Nahida dies and start getting value there. Now opponent's not going to kill our Nahida because they want to get the value from their Nahida, because their Nahida has the weapon and the artifact the Gambler's Earrings on. And in a way we're fine with this. We can still get some good value out of our Nahida using her skill again. And I'm using the 5-cost skill here, even though it uses more dice, because having counted the rest of my dice, I should still be able to use, assuming our Nahida will die, we'll still be able to use Zhang Ling's burst and Raiden's burst on this turn with the help of the I haven't lost yet in our hand. If that wasn't the case, we would just be using the 3-cost skill from our Nahida here, which would also be strong. The 5-cost skill really only nets us 2 extra damage, or 3 extra damage. It's less good with their 3rd character dead, but it's still worth using here. Now, our own Nahida is very likely to die here, because their Nahida has both the weapon, which gives +1 damage, +2 damage on a reaction. We've got the Pyro Aura on our Nahida already. Any attack they do will trigger their Seas of Skandha, and they've got the Zhang Ling burst there as well to deal 2 extra Pyro damage afterwards. So even without any cards, the skill with the reaction, with the weapon and the Pyronado would deal 8 to us if they used their 5-cost skill. But that is most of their dice. They do have the Gamblers to get 2 back, but that is still something that they're pretty much forced to do, because if they're not using their Nahida now, well, they're not really going to be getting another chance to. They'd have to waste a lot of dice switching to Collei, would be switching to Zhang Ling, and they probably wouldn't even be able to get a kill. So they're pretty much forced here to do something with their Nahida to get value out of their weapon, to get value out of the Gambler's Earrings that they developed on turn 1. So they're kind of restricted into that play, forced to do that because of the artifact and weapon they developed all the way back on turn 1. Which is why it can be useful to save that sort of play till later when you know you can get immediate value. The opponent's going to use a Tandoori Fried Chicken here to give +2 damage, not because they need it to kill our Nahida, but because it means that the 2 damage the Pyro Nadu from Zhang Ling's burst is going to deal the 2 Pyro damage to our Zhang Ling, which means that they can potentially get a kill on Zhang Ling as well. We'll use our Gambler's Earrings, since we can get a kill here. And that's only going to cost 1 die. Not really going to be another chance to do it. Here we go. And again, with the tandoori fried chicken effect, I'm very aware that they might kill my Zhang Ling here, just using Kolei's skill. But with the I haven't lost yet in hand, we kind of had this whole turn planned out from the start. We're absolutely fine if they do that. We'll have a bunch of summons still left over that we'll get damage from at the end of the turn even, as well as a high likelihood of using Raiden's Burst on this turn, which is probably just going to be enough on its own. No matter what opponent does, probably checkmate here. In this case they'll take out our Zhang Ling, we'll get a free swap to our Raiden, we'll get the extra energy from our haven't lost yet, and we'll end the game quite decisively with a burst here. And yeah, we would have had even more damage from our summons at the end of the turn. So this is kind of what I mean by it, saying that this deck is designed to end turns at the end of turn 3, and is able to do so fairly consistently with most draws.